A string is a collection of characters in Python, and like all other programming languages, string have a pivotal role to play in Python programming. Remember, string manipulation is one of the powerful features of Python. The functions and the way we can manipulate strings is something that stands out in Python. You wouldn't find it in most other programming languages. Now, strings in Python, they'll be surrounded either by single quotes or double quotes. Let me show you an example. Okay, so let's say I'm defining a string. The name of a string has to be a valid identifier. All I have to do is I have to enclose it within double quotes. So I can say good evening. And if I execute this cell, you can see that I did not get back any error messages. That means it was a successful statement. So the only thing that you need to keep in mind is your name. The name of the string has to be a valid identifier. We have gone over that before. And string constant, it has to be enclosed within double quotes. Now, if I print this, you will see that I get the desired output. So if I do print my str, there you have it. I get the output, right? Now, strings need not always be enclosed within double quotes. We can also have strings within single quotes. So we can have something like this. Let's say I'll just make the change here. I'll just rerun this cell. So I'll enclose it within single quotes. If I do that, and then if I execute this cell, you can see that the number is changed to 3. That means there has been a new execution. Now if I print this, you'll see that I get the same output. So it works. So you can have your strings enclosed within double quotes, or you can have them enclosed within single quotes. Now another thing that you need to keep in mind is you can have multi-line strings. Okay, so how do you have multi-line strings? What do I mean by multi-line string is here the string good evening, it's on a single line, right? It's just one line of string that you can see here highlighted. Now you can have your strings spread across multiple lines. Now how do you do that? Let me show you. Let me just keep this as it is. I'll take up a new cell and I'll say my multi-line. I'll just write the whole name, okay? It's always good to have meaningful variable names. So my multi-line string is equal to, and what I'll do is I'll start off 3 single quotes and 3. So you can see I've started off 3 single quotes and automatically I've got 3 single quotes along with it. So I have typed 3 single quotes as I've highlighted, and Jupyter Notebook has provided me with 3 more single quotes. Now what is this extra 3 single quotes that is provided? This extra 3 is for the closing quotes, right? So I can just spread it across multiple lines and I can write something. Let's say I can say today is Friday, and go to the next line. I can say tomorrow. I just hope I get my spellings right. Tomorrow is Saturday. Day after is what I am looking towards. Okay. Now if I run this, as you can see, I got back the next cell, which means the execution was successful. So I was successfully able to assign that multi-line string. And now what I can do is I can try to print this out, and you can see that the output has been printed across 3 lines. So this is how you would have multi-line strings. Okay, you can have single line strings, you enclose them within single quotes or double quotes. You can have multi-line strings where you use triple quotes. Okay, you use triple quotes for your multi-line strings. Now, it's not necessary that you always have to use triple single quotes. You can also use triple double quotes. So I can have something like this. So as you can see, the moment I type 3 double quotes back to back, 3 more double quotes, as I've highlighted, are provided by Python, by the notebook, by the Jupyter notebook. So that's how it is. So it gives us the closing part as well. So the closing part will also be 3 more double quotes. So I'll just take that and I'll stick it at the end. So there you have it. Now let me execute this, and you can see that it is executed successfully. If I print it out, I should get back the same output, and yes, I do. So that's how you would come up with multi-line strings, right? That's how you would come up with multi-line strings. Fine. Now, the next thing that I would like to demonstrate is that, like many other programming languages, strings in Python have an underlying character set. Now, in C programming, the characters in strings are represented using ASCII values. In Python programming, the characters in strings are represented using Unicode values. So Unicode is this superset, right? Unicode is the superset of ASCII, or you can look at it this way: ASCII is a subset of Unicode. So characters, when you represent them using Unicode, you need 2 bytes, whereas in ASCII you need only 1. Now, in Python, you do not have a separate character data type. A single character is simply a string with a length of 1. Okay, so that was about the underlying character set that is used in Python. It is Unicode. Please keep that in mind. Now, strings are indexed. Okay, we can index strings because they are ordered. The characters that you have, like we have defined how many strings? We have defined 2 strings so far. And all these characters inside the string, these characters, mind you, they are following an order. They are following a sequence. Now, since strings follow a sequence, string values follow a sequence, we can index them. We can index strings. Now, how do we index strings? We index strings using the square brackets. So you index your strings, you index, by indexing what you mean is you extract characters using their positional values. I'll give you an example. Let's say I have a string called good. Now, this string is made up of 4 characters: a G, double O, and a small d. Right? Now, this string, as you can see, it's made up of 4 characters. And here, what you have is the first character G, it is actually at position 0. So G, the G that you find here, it is at position 0, or we can say it is at index 0. The O, the first O that you find, it is at index 1. The next O that you find is at index 2, and the D that you find is at index 3. Similarly, you can take up another string. Let's say there's another string called evening, right? You would do the same thing. You would have the same thing. The characters have index values. So E is at index 0, V is at index 1, the second E is at index 2, then 3, 4, 5, and 6. So what you observe is indexing in Python always starts from 0, right? The first character is at index 0. And if you observe one thing, what is the length of this string good? The length of this string good is 4, right? The length is 4. Let me just convert this into a markdown cell so that I get no errors. Yeah. So the length of this string good is 4. And look at the highest index. The highest index is 3. What about the length of the next string, evening? What about the length of this string? The length of this string is, I think you have figured it out by now, it is 7. The length is 7. And look at the highest index. The highest index is 6. So this proves that the highest index of a string, the highest index of a string is always length minus 1. Keep this in mind. The highest index value, the highest index value of, sorry about that, of a character in a string is length of the string, or I can put it this way, is one less than the length of the string. Okay, so just keep this in mind. And of course, by highest index value of a character, what I'm trying to refer to is nothing but the last character, right? The last character will have this highest index value, and it will always be one less than the length of the string. Okay, so this brings us to our next point of discussion, and that is how do we find the length of a string, right? So I'll just break this up. I'll just use line breaks. We can use HTML tags in Jupyter Notebook, so I'll use them. I'll say BR for line break, BR again. I'll just quickly type these BR tags. It will help me to document my characters, right? It will help me to document the text. So another BR and another BR here. I don't need a BR at the end, right? Yeah, that looks much better. Fine. Now that brings us to our next point of discussion, that is how do we find the length of a string, right? How do we find the length of a string? Now, in order to find the length of a string, what we need to do is we need to make use of the len function. So there is a built-in function called len, and we can make use of that to find the length of a string. So let's say I pass a string constant. Let's say I take up the examples that I've just shown you above, good and evening. Let me pass the string good. What should I get? I should get back 4. And yes, that is exactly what I get. What if I pass evening? What if I pass the string constant evening? What should I get? I should get back 7. Yes, that is exactly what I'm getting. So the len function is probably one of the most used functions in strings, and we will be using them a lot as well in our discussions. Okay, so that was about finding the length of a string. Now, this applies to variables as well, right? So if I have a string called my string, and let's say I decide to type the name of my channel, SP Tutorials. I hope I got the spelling right. Yeah, I think I did. Tutorials. Yeah, got that right. Now, if I try to print the length, I can do that. I can print the length of a string variable as well. So I can say print len of my string. And there you have it. If you count the characters in this string, SP tutorials, you will get back a value of 12. And of course, keep this in mind that this space is also included. Space is a character and we have to include it. Okay. So the space is also counted in finding the length of this string, and it is rightly reported as 12. So that's a new learning for me as well. I didn't know the number of characters in the name of my channel. Okay, fine. So let's move on to the next point of discussion. Okay, let me just document my notebook. So this was about, okay, let me just add, where do I add it? Insert, yeah. Insert cell above. So let me just document this, make this a markdown. So firstly, we were talking about creating strings. Yeah, that's what we spoke about, creating strings. Great. Next, we moved on. So we saw two things, right? In creating strings, we saw a single line string and we saw multi-line strings. So strings can be in single quotes as well as double quotes. Please keep that in mind. Next point that we discussed was I should make a markdown cell here. I should say we discussed the length, right? The length of the length of strings. Okay, so how do we find the length of a string? Using the len function. Okay, the next thing that I want to bring up, which is also related to the length, which was brought up when I was discussing length, and that is indexing. Okay, let's try to understand indexing. Indexing plays a very significant role in strings. So let's take it up. So indexing. Now, what I showed you here in this example, this markdown cell, if you concentrate on this markdown cell, what I showed you was positive indexing. Remember, Python supports two types of indexing, positive indexing as well as negative indexing. And indexing is applicable for all sequential data structures. Okay, all data structures. We'll come across more data structures in our upcoming videos. We'll look at lists, we'll look at tuples, we will look at dictionaries, we'll look at sets. So in all these data structures, these built-in data structures that Python provides, what we have are two types. We have two types of data structures. One type of data structures is ordered. That means there is a sequence to the elements in the data structure. Such data structures which have a sequence to them, which maintain an order among the items, they can be indexed. Whereas on the other hand, you have kind of data structures, another type of data structures, which are unordered, which do not maintain a sequence, and as a result they cannot be indexed. So strings mind you, are indexable, right? We can index strings because the characters are maintained as a sequence. There is an ordering among the characters, and as a result strings can be indexed. Now, indexing, like I was saying, is of two types. You can have positive indexing, like I've shown you. You start from 0 and then you keep on going one place up. So you go 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on up to 1 less than the length of the string. Now there is another concept of negative indexing. Now in negative indexing, what happens is the last character. So you start the indexing from the last character of the string, and the last character gets an index value of -1. It gets an index value of -1, and then The second last character gets an index value of -2, the third last gets an index value of -3, and so on. Okay, so I'll just illustrate this point with the help of an example. I'll show you, don't worry. So let me just define a string for myself. Okay, I think I have one, right? I have one, my string. I already have this string, I'll just use it. Yeah, so my string contains the name of my channel. Now what I'll do is I'll do some indexing here. So I'll say my string. So let's say I want S. I want the first letter, right? I want the first letter of my string. So how do I do that? The first character or the first letter in my string is at index 0. So I say my string of 0. And what do I get? Yes, I get S, right? Great. Now, how do I find the last character? How do I find the last character in my string? Think about it. Just pause the video for a moment and think about it. Okay, I guess you've given it a thought. One answer would be that, okay, let me count the number of characters, and the last character, like I had mentioned, is one less than the length of the string. The index of the last character is one less than the length of the string. So if the length of the string after counting comes out to be 12, then the last character must be at position 11. Absolutely, that approach works fine. So you can say my string of 11, and there you have it. You get S, which happens to be the last character in my string. Now it's not possible to manually count like this because this string is small, consists of fewer characters you are able to count. But what if the string was enormously large? Then such manual counting doesn't work. So another approach that you can probably come up with is something like this. So you say my string of, what you do is you find the length. So you find the length. Now what will the length come out to be? The length will come out to be one more than the index value of the last character. I'll repeat. The length of the string will come out to be one more than the index of the last character. So what should you do? In order to find the index of the last character, you should subtract 1 from the length. Now if I do that, what do I get? I get small s, I get the same output. So even this works. So both approaches are great. Now let me introduce you to a third approach, which I'm sure you would like. And that is, what did I say? In negative indexing, the last character of the string gets an index value of -1. The second last gets an index value of -2. The third last -3, -4, -5, -6, and so on. So I can directly say, if I have to get the last character of my string, I can simply say -1, and there you have it. You get the last character in the string. So this negative indexing approach is something that is unique to Python. You wouldn't find it in any other programming language. Okay, so that's how this works, right? That's how this works. So indexing works fine. So you have positive indexing as well as negative indexing. So you can find the this character T. You can find this uppercase T as well. How do you find it? So you can use positive indexing. In this case, positive indexing proves to be more beneficial. So S is at index 0, P is at index 1, space is at index 2, and this T is at index 3. So I can directly say my string of 3. If I say my string of 3, I get capital T, right? Great. So that works. Now let me show you another interesting point about indexing. That is, now what is the length of this string? The length of this string, let me just calculate it for you. So, we have the len function. So the length of the string comes out to be 12, right? That means the last index that I can get, or the last character of my string, is present at index 11. It's always one less than the length of the string. The last index value is always one less than the length of the string. So what I can do is I can show you one interesting thing. What if I try to go beyond this? That means the last index that I can access is 1 minus the length of the string. What is the length of the string? 12. So the last index that I can access is 11. What if I try to go beyond 11? Let's say I try 15. Or maybe I can just try 12. If I try 12, see what happens. I get an error. And this error is very interesting. It's called an index error. Now this index error is similar to what you would find in programming languages like Java as array index out of bounds exception, right? That array index out of bounds exception, which you would find in other programming languages like Java, is given as index error here. So if you try to go beyond your string, if you try to access an index which does not contain a character in your string, you will get this index error. Okay, so please be careful with this. Please don't try to access characters which are beyond your string, or let me put it this way, please don't try to access positions or indexes which are beyond your string, because doing so would result in an index error. Okay, I hope indexing makes sense. Fine. Now let's move on to the next point. The next point that I would like to illustrate is, how do we loop through a string? Interesting. Just have a look. Let me just start another section. I'll call it looping on strings. So let's see, how do we loop through strings? Okay, so I think through would be a better word, no? Yeah, I think looping on strings, it should be looping through strings. Okay, let's see how we can loop through strings. Of course, the first loop that comes to mind, the first loop that comes to mind is the for loop, right? It's the for loop, and we can use it, right? We can use for loop. I'll just show you a simple example first. Let's say I have a loop control variable called x, and let's say I want to go over a string. Let's say I want to go over the string, again, my channel name, okay, tutorials, and I would give a colon, I'd hit enter, and the indentation, as you can see, happens automatically, and I'm printing x. Now see, what happens here is I'm introducing you to a new operator called the in operator. Now what this in operator will do is, see, listen to this very carefully. My loop control variable is x. So using this x, I will be able to go through every character in this string, which I have highlighted. This string, which is there in double quotes, the name of my channel, I'm trying to iterate over this string using the variable x. So using x, I'll be just going through one character after the other. So in the first run of the loop, x will contain the first character, which is capital S, and that will be printed. In the next run of the loop, x will contain capital P, which is the second character, and that will be printed. Then it will contain the space, which will be printed. So in this way, one character after the other will be iterated over and it will be printed. And we are iterating using the loop control variable x, which can be any identifier for that matter. Any legal identifier you can use for your loop control variable. Okay, so if we execute this, we'll get every character, including the white space, on a separate line, and that is exactly what we get, isn't it? If you want to print it on the same line, you know what to do. There is the end parameter, and we can set it to a single space. And if we print that, you can see that every character is spaced out. And if you don't want that space, if you want it as it is, just give it an empty string. Just pass an empty string to the end parameter and you get the exact string on a single line, right? So using the in operator, right? Using the in operator, we will be able to go through every character of the string. Now, again, this applies to string constants as well as string variables. So if I have a variable such as my var equal to morning, and then if I have a loop, something like for I in my var, give a colon because I'm going to start the loop body, and then if I have a print and a I, and if I set the end parameter to an empty string, there you have it. The string is printed. The same thing happens. Now, instead of going over a string constant character by character, I'm simply going over a string variable, which in turn contains a string constant character after character, and I'm printing them on the same line. Okay, so that was about your looping on strings. So we can loop through strings in this way. Now, since we are dealing with the in operator, there's something I would like to show you. Let's say I have a string. Remember this string, this multi-line string that we had? What was the name of it? It was my multi-line string. So I can bring that up. So I can say my, I'll hit tab. Yeah, so my multi-line string, as you can see, now I'm getting these new line characters because they're there. These new line characters exist and they're being shown explicitly by the \n, the escape sequence \n. Fine. So this is a multi-line string, right? Let's say I want to check whether a particular word is present in this string or not. My objective is to check, let's say, whether the string Monday is present in my string, my multi-line string. I want to check. Now, how do I do this checking? Now, to do this checking, what I can make use of is the in operator. The in operator was first used when we were going through this loop. Now we're going to use this in operator to check whether a string exists in a larger string. Okay, so let's see that. So I can check, I can say Monday, and I can do in, and then I can say my multi-line string. Let me just try to print this out. So I'll enclose it within the print function. So I'll say print and this entire thing. If I hit enter, and there you have it, I get a Boolean value, and the Boolean value false. Why? If you decide to print my multi-line string, what do you get? You get this multi-line string, and in this multi-line string, there is no word called Monday, right? There is no word called Monday. That's why if you're looking for Monday in this string using the in keyword, you're getting back false. You're getting back false. Now let's try something similar. Let's try to look for a string which actually exists. So we should get back true, right? So if I say print, let's say Friday, does Friday exist? And it does. And that's why we are getting back true, right? So in this way, you can check for a string within a larger string. Now, what if you tried with something like this? Let's say you're checking for Friday, but the F is in lowercase. Will it work? Of course not, because Python is case sensitive. So Friday with a capital F is different from a Friday with a lowercase f. Okay, so don't expect that they will be treated as the same string. Friday with a capital F is very different from a Friday with a lowercase f, right? So this is how the in operator works. Similarly, you've probably guessed it, if there is an in, there must be a not in. Absolutely. So what will it do? It will do exactly the reverse. So if I say print Monday not in multi-line string, then what would it mean? It would mean that if Monday is not present in my string variable, which I have highlighted, then I will get back a true value. Just check. Absolutely, Monday is not present. If you observe, Monday is not present in this string. As a result, I correctly get back true. And if I do the same thing, let's say I do the same thing, and now if I pass a string which is actually present, say I do Friday not in my string, I get back false. So because Friday is actually present, Friday is actually present in my string. So if I use the not in operator in this case, if I use the not in operator to check for a string which is actually present in my larger string, I'll get back false. If I use the not in keyword to check for a string which does not exist in the larger string, then I'll get back true, as we saw in the case of Monday. Okay, so that was a quick glance on the in and not in operator coupled with the looping through strings. That concludes the first part of our video on strings. If you found this video useful, do like it and subscribe to our channel. If you have any doubts, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.